Welcome, everyone, to Canucks This Week. I'm Paul Chapman, joined by Patrick Johnston, Canucks beat writer extraordinaire. I want to thank everyone for listening, first of all, watching. Not really much visual going on here, thankfully. It's more about the information that comes 98.9% from Patrick. Want to urge you to sign up for our Canucks report. You get all our stuff delivered to you every day, all our Canucks content from all of our writers. Some excellent stuff going on these days. And I will say, Patrick and I, we tend to focus on our website. We did notice that on the YouTube channel, there's a lot of views, a lot of you watching on YouTube, and a lot of very kind comments there. It says a lot about really smart people who watch YouTube versus the absolute bottom-feeding scum that seems to go on X. Judging by the comments, there are some nice people on X too, but we don't seem to get the nastiness. So anyhow, enough with that. Patrick, let me run a couple of scenarios by you. We were recording this on a beautifully sunny and chilly Friday morning prior to the Super Bowl weekend. Canucks coming off a 4-0 hiding, as my English father used to say, the hands of the Bruins. Elias Pettersson, is he distracted? You know, we had the four amazing leaders, Hughes, Besser, Miller, Pettersson, all at the top of the charts. Now they've slipped. The team has lost. Before I ask you if the sky is falling, this team is still number one in the NHL. When it looks like they've had a tough stretch to the schedule, they seem to have managed it pretty well. But I will ask you, is there any cause for concern as we can kind of almost see the playoffs peeking up on the horizon?
You know, I was talking to a couple of people this morning about sort of what they're seeing.
Molly and Alice?
Yes, exactly. Two noted experts in the field of you talk to people around the league and what they think and what they see. And certainly you look at sort of comparisons from recent years, teams that you find yourself thinking about, everything from like the 2012 Bruins, who were sort of top of the world, obviously coming off their big Stanley Cup win over the Canucks, playing well, a lot of strong factors in their favor, and then the wheels came off the bus in the last 20 or so games of the season. Lost in the first round. You look at a team like the 18-19 Canadiens, a team that probably was punching above.
Sorry, are you talking 1918-19 Canadiens? Ariel Joliet?
No, that was the Nussy Lalonde discussion a month ago.
Okay.
No, the 2018-19 Canadiens, who we're an interesting team. Again, another Claude Julien coach team, interestingly enough. They're the team with the most points not to make the playoffs. They had 96 points. You're trying to figure out, okay, what happened there? You know, the Canucks are probably somewhere in between those two. That was a team that was good 2-way team, but probably got a bunch of chances, bunch of bounces their way offensively. Now, I think the Canucks are better offensively than that team. I'm not sure they're the defending Stanley Cup champion 2011-12 Bruins, on the other hand. But both those teams had problems, and both those teams hit a wall. And, you know, you highlight Pettersson and his struggles. I mean, he's still scoring on power plays. He's still scoring in overtime, right? He's just been struggling at 5-on-5. Is that some of it because he's been carrying around two dead bodies with him in Ilya Mikheyev and then until recently Andrei Kuzmenko? There are a lot of things to wonder about this team right now, for sure, but they are also the only team that have not lost 3 times in a row. They've only lost 2 games in a row twice all season. Like, they've played enough now for us to understand a lot about what they are, and is that they're a very solid defensive team. Some of that is because they've led so much. They haven't had to take risks as much as a team that's chasing the game. They have not had to chase many games at all, which is some of that story. Some of the scoring is going to decline. We've been talking about this for ages. You know, in the end, I think they're just going to end up playing in more one-goal games. They've been fine in one-goal games. They're generally a toss-up. The Canucks have won half their one-goal games. You know, that this is a story of a team that has done enough to get to this point to be, as you said, they're the best. They have the best record in the NHL, right? Like that.
Yeah, and you referred to Elias Pettersson's struggles, right? He's still 10th in the NHL in scoring and 8th in goal, 10th in goal scoring. Sorry, 8th overall in points.
Yeah. So it's a complicated story, and it was interesting. All people getting so obviously emotionally upset about anytime the Canucks lose the Bruins is difficult. The way they lost was not good. There was absolutely no denying it, and that was a point that Rick Tocchet made. He also was clearly trying to hold back and not make a mountain out of a molehill, which is saying, listen, my team had not taken a point in a game in 12 games before this. Like, let's not forget that part of the story too.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I mean, our job in the end, our job are to be critical, is to be step back, say, whoa, hold on. And I think at this point, the question is, okay, is it just, will they be able to stay top of the summit? Will they be able to be the best team in the league? But what are the pitfalls? What are the risks ahead of them? What are the things that could go badly? And you look at the schedule, obviously they're on the road right now. Back-to-back this weekend, that they could conceivably go and lose in Detroit and go and lose in Washington, right? But then they go and play in Chicago, right? Like the team that you would think they should win. So they could, but then you never say never, right? Like there's just enough I've seen in this team, and enough consistency and enough offensive talent and enough strength defensively and strength in goaltending that it really does seem unlikely that things are going to fall apart so badly that they'll start losing multiple games in a row. It's just hard to fathom.
So, I'm not going to go on my thoughts. If anyone who's followed us over the years, my thoughts on the President's Trophy are well known. I wish it was a bigger deal. It's not. When you look at how long it's been, at first, it's almost like this NBA in-season tournament trying to emulate what happens in European soccer. There's this hope that one day it will be like have some prestige to it. I don't think the President's Trophy ever has, unfortunately. So let's throw that out the window. I mean, right now they would be in position to win it. I'd like you to get into a little bit about playoffs, right? Because this season's expectations went from let's get in the playoffs to like, pardon my language, but holy shit, we could win the Stanley Cup, which I think is legit, by the way. So let's look at the conference. They, now the sort of the games played where they had a bit of an advantage is whittled back a little bit. They played the same amount of games as the Stars, who are in second place. They have a 5-point bulge in the Stars. Colorado's played same thing, 5 points back. They've played one more game than the Canucks. Yeah, the Jets have played 2 fewer games than the Canucks at this point, but the Jets have come back to earth a little bit themselves, and they're 8 points back. So, and then you've got the Oilers lurking there as well. So, to me, the rest of the season is not about finishing first in the NHL. It's about securing home advantage through the playoffs. So, you wrote a wonderful piece this week. People should go read it at theprovince.com. Subscribe to our newsletter. You'll get it sent to you. Who should the Canucks be looking to avoid, or who should the Canucks be hoping to play in the first round of the playoffs? Because I think, as we've seen with this team, you can build momentum, right? So you would worry that, like, wow, the playoffs are new. There's all this pressure. There's all this buzz in town. You get in, oops, we stubbed our toe. So when you look at the jockeying, which will happen between now and the end of the season, where are the pitfalls? Where are the good matchups? Where are the bad matchups?
Well, one of the things that stood out to me in putting that story together was looking at sort of the even chances. There's no obvious team that they're most likely to play against right now. It's kind of this isn't like what we saw with the Bruins and Leafs, where we knew like for 3 months
exactly.
There's sort of a 1 in 4 chance that it's going to be. And just 1 in 4 that's going to be the Oilers, 1 in 4 that's going to be the Vegas, 1 in 4 that's going to be LA, and then 1 in 4 that's going to be one of Seattle, St. Louis, or Nashville. That fourth option that is Seattle, Nashville, or St. Louis, I think that realistically is probably, although St. Louis is a very interesting, intriguing X factor in all this. But I think that's the one you probably want to end up with. The other 3 are so interesting right now because, so you have essentially a 75% chance thereabouts of playing one of Edmonton, Vegas, or LA, which I think we saw once the Canucks went off on this, on the season. Once they raced ahead of everybody, you started going, okay, well, at first it was trying to avoid playing LA or Vegas, or realizing you're going to play a really tough team. Now it was like, can you finish first? But what does that give you? Like,
I would love to say that they have a good or bad matchup with LA, but as you know, with this really weird schedule, we can't say that.
well, yeah, and I mean, we're not going to even see it until the end of the season, right? Like
Yeah.
they have 7 games against LA and Vegas to essentially close, the last 6 weeks of the season or whatever it is. LA, the way that they seem so in disarray, like you look back whenever that was live 2 weeks ago with Drew Doughty just ripping his teammates, and everyone sort of assumed he's talking about guys like Pierre-Luc Dubois and being the biggest name, I think, but just sort of the lack of disunity. They changed coaches, which I don't think anyone expected was going to happen. They came to the season with Cam Talbot as their goalie. Again, people around the league, I think, weren't convinced they would actually go through the season with Talbot as their guy, that maybe they would flip for someone else. We'll see if that actually changes. But I guess if you have to pick one of those 3 teams, you're picking LA, just because Vegas, obviously defending Stanley Cup champions, they're dealing with some injuries right now, and they're still in the mix. Jack Eichel's supposed to be back well before the playoffs have been announced. A team that just plays hockey, sort of perfect hockey, as far as at least Rick Tocchet's would be concerned, the way he wants his team to play. He wants them to be Vegas. And then, the X factor, obviously playing Connor McDavid's Edmonton Oilers, a team that's not terribly deep defensively, have finally maybe found a goalie in Stuart Skinner, although I'm never convinced, really, given how little the Oilers have taken goalies seriously over the years, that he actually is the solution. But McDavid is just such a game breaker that in a playoff series, I don't think you want to face him. You just don't want to have him as a player that you're having to deal with night in, night out. So it's kind of a weird power rankings, but at LA, I guess, Nashville or Seattle, certainly probably not St. Louis, just given how tight they've played against the Canucks. You don't want to play Vegas, and you don't want to play Edmonton. So there you go. It's a complicated, weird, elaborate scheme. We'll see how things play out. The more the Canucks keep winning, of course, the better off their chances are of being first overall in the West, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I do think home advantage is. Look, there's good teams are good teams, and you're in a 7-game series. Probably goaltending might be the most. Goaltending, special teams might be the biggest intangibles. Canucks do have the fewest losses in the NHL at home. They only lost 4 games at home all year.
Yeah.
One thing I do, it does matter. And one thing that I have found very odd about the NHL this year, and we did it. Maybe it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago. We talked about the streaky nature. You saw Seattle with this, long streak. We know about Edmonton's streak. The Canucks had strung together, multiple wins. The longest win streak in the NHL right now is 3 games. Like, it's just such a strange league. And I think, to your point, once we get closer towards the end of the year, we're going to be looking at, who's hot at the right time. And that's why a team like St. Louis would scare me a little bit, considering their pedigree. The year they won the Cup, they just, as we know, they went on this massive tear post-Christmas that really turned their season around, and that kept that momentum going into the playoffs. So it is about form. Injuries play into it. I am a little curious to see whether it's the Canucks or the teams that they're competing against, what the trade deadline brings. I mean, we're still a month away from that. But I am curious as we start to see some of that separation. I mean, credit to Calgary. We'll get onto the new players in a second, but they've been like, okay, we know what we're doing. We're going to plan for next year, and they're collecting assets. And there's going to be more teams like that. And so again, whether that's the Canucks and whether you want to be reactive, we talked last week about them being proactive and making these moves, but we'll see what those other teams do. On that point, how have you assessed Lindholm so far?
I mean, a guy that brings, I think, what they wanted or what they felt was lacking from Elias Pettersson. I mean, I mentioned, obviously playing with Mikheyev and Kuzmenko and not getting any production. I mean, Lindholm obviously scoring two goals in his debut, but more importantly, a guy that's going to win some board battles, a guy that's going to get on the puck. That's why he was successful in Calgary. It's what made him such a good fit 2 seasons ago I can't remember now. Was it 3 seasons? 3 seasons ago with Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk. A guy that gets the puck, makes smart plays on the puck, and and I think is why he will be such a good fit with Pettersson. You think about Pettersson, he's a guy that wants to carry the puck. He's a guy that likes to have the puck on his stick. And Lindholm, I think, is a player who is happy to play with a player like that. So there is plenty of reason to continue thinking that they're going to be a great pair together. It comes back to, I think, what Mikheyev is able to do. Mikheyev just has not looked. I mean, obviously, he's a year out now from his knee surgery, right? Like now is when he should starting to look like himself again. But it might not even come till next year. He's looked like such a shadow of himself, even from when he was playing the first half of last year with one knee. He's just been so ineffective. But Lindholm brings an element to that line that you think will energize things. You know, Pettersson struggling to score at 5-on-5 in the last month, but has been able to score on the man advantage, has been able to score in overtime. Like he's been able to make things happen. Just it's been a difficult effort for him against the other team's best players, which he's being asked to do. I mean, you add Lindholm, there's a clear intention to make that line a two-way line that's going to face down against tough opposition. I think it's going to make a big difference for the Miller-Besser situation. I mean, those guys are obviously already having great seasons, but they're probably going to see a little less of the other team's top two-way players. You know, that is the kind of situation that I think Miller and Besser should both thrive in. Lindholm just adds a lot to this lineup. There's just things that's going to shape how other teams view this team in such an interesting way and such an advantageous way. And it goes back to that original question. You know, are they going to have any stumbles? And I think adding a player like this insulates you even further against the risk of having a multi-game losing streak, because you're not only finding a guy that can put the puck in the net, but you're just finding a guy that just improves the overall shape and performance of your team. And you know, through two games, I mean, obviously the game on Thursday in Boston was not great. The Pettersson line basically benched, but there's enough in Lindholm's game, I think, that we say going forward that it makes sense. He's been an excellent. He will be an excellent addition.
And he's Swedish.
He's Swedish. They love it. Yeah.
Who's I know I asked you this earlier in the year. I find it interesting how, again, we talk about the ebb and flow of a season. Who's the team MVP in your opinion right now?
That's a great question, honestly. I mean, it's Thank probably you. Yeah. There's been some real stand-up performance. My instinct is that it's Quinn Hughes, just with everything he's doing, the way he's driving the bus, the way he's improved his overall game, the way he's proven to be more effective in shooting the puck. You know, not just a guy that's floating the puck in anymore for tips, which is something the Canucks have specialized in over the years and done very well. But he's shooting to score. A guy, you know, his shot attempt percentage, his Corsi is up to 55%. Like, that's the best of his career. Like, that more than anything is what's really important about his game, is how much time he's spending offensively. Obviously, some of that is about playing with a true partner in Philip Hronek. He's the MVP. I mean, you could talk about guys who, you know, Pettersson's play in January, I mean, in the end, was a star of the month. You know, with the game-winning goal streak, I joked about New Lalonde before, but that, you know, that was in the context of him having 4 games in a row winning game winners. Like, that matters, right? Like, whether he's scoring at 5-on-5 or not, like, the fact is he has been getting there at crunch time, and that makes a difference. And he's had too good a season to say that, you know, even if he's in a slump right now, and it's hard to say because he's scoring, but even if he's in a sort of a pace of play struggle slump at 5-on-5, there's too much in his game that he's done this season that tells you he's going to pick it back up, and he's got Elias Lindholm on his wing. So you know, there's a guy that conceivably, if anybody's going to knock Quinn Hughes off the MVP perch, I think it will be him. JT Miller's having a great offensive season, but you know, he's sort of settled into the role that he needs to be in, which is an emotional power forward for this team. But the guy that is the two-way force is Pettersson, and then the guy over above all those guys is Quinn Hughes. And obviously, you know, honorable mention to Thatcher Demko, who's having a fantastic season.
Absolutely.
You know, I think we'll be a finalist for the Vezina. I mean, the voting is done by not by media, so it's sort of a tricky one there. You never know how I think it's the GMs are going to split on that one. But a goalie who's done well, played well, probably didn't help, obviously, Thursday night in Boston, but he's had some great performances. He played so great, he's had some big performances on big stages this season, and he's played well too. But Quinn Hughes, I mean, it's hard to argue against that.
So next 4 games: Detroit twice, obviously on the road now, and then at home when they finally, first time in 3 weeks, they'll be at home next Thursday. But Detroit twice, Chicago and Washington. How many do you expect them to win?
Well, Detroit is an interesting team, a team that's been shooting as almost a big a percentage as the Canucks. They've been finding some offensive success that has sustained them in the playoff race in the East. Haven't been great defensively. Been getting some good goaltending from Alex Lyon lately, but even so, a flawed team and one the Canucks should beat both times, but you never know. Saturday's game, obviously early in the day, although the Canucks have been playing a lot of midday games on Saturdays this season, so not unusual for them. Chicago, obviously being the complete total disaster of a lineup they are.
Yeah.
How do you not beat that team? And if you don't, you should be deeply concerned. I don't think they go back-to-back this weekend, so they're going to lose once. I think they'll beat Chicago, and then I think they'll beat Detroit next Thursday. So let's say 3-1.
We'll just wrap up here. I agree with you, 3-1. I know that they haven't been in this time zone for a while because they had the break. But, for people watching a 10 a.m. Saturday, 10:30 a.m. Sunday game is a little bit odd. But, I'd be a little concerned about that Capitals game, but we'll see where they go.
And just on that point, you've been the most consistent prognosticator between us. Like early in the year, I kept going, they're going to lose. They're going to lose.
Yeah,
you kept going, no, they're going to go undefeated this.
That's because you're a cynical beat reporter who people keep track of what he says. No one gives a crap what I have to say. If we look at the schedule, though, just looking ahead, we'll cover this more next week. You want to talk about getting excited now, right? Like with the team coming home and you start to maybe do some playoff matchup jockeying in your head.
Right.
They got the Saturday night game against the Jets, who have been surprisingly good this year. Prior to that, of course, they got the Red Wings, who always draw well. And then the following Saturday, they got the Bruins at home. Yeah. Again, a 4:00 start. It was great.
Yeah.
But in between, like I know there's COVID in there in between. They're playing in Seattle on a Thursday night. Man, I want a Saturday night game in Seattle to give fans the real opportunity to say, I'm going to go down there and see it.
Yeah.
When we talk about, when you talk about rivalries, right? Like I don't find that the Seattle rivalry hasn't been there no matter how much we want to force it with geography. It's when you play in the playoffs. So when you look at playoff matchups, can you imagine the opportunity to just drive down to a road playoff game?
Oh, it'd be
like
fabulous.
You're playing 2 games and you stay in Seattle for a couple of nights. It would just be so much fun for Canuck fans to have the opportunity to do that. But I look at it, right? Like you've got Dallas with the ownership situation, which I don't know how much that plays into fans' psyche, but I think it's fantastic. The Oilers, we know, like even this week, Mike Raptis does this great Canucks This Week feature we've started where he looks around what other people are saying about the Canucks. And Connor McDavid was asked like who their biggest rivals are heading into the playoffs, and he totally does not mention the Canucks at all. It's clear the Canucks in their early season success really got under that team's skin. Yeah, you got Seattle. I think people should start getting really excited, just looking ahead and thinking like, man, this is going to be fun. And even when it spins out of this year, if you get to play a Seattle or Edmonton in the playoffs, and then that builds that excitement again. We laugh about the Bruins, right? Game 8. Which regular season games would you get excited about now? But once you add playoffs to the mix and you have those series, that's then next year. You're like, honestly, I'm so thrilled for Canuck fans because this team is in a great spot as we can sort of set the table for the next year or two.
Well, that obviously you mentioned. Where to start? But you look at that run that they start with the Bruins, then they host the Penguins, then that Kings finally face the Kings February 29th, a Thursday.
Leap year.
They face the Kings and they face the Kings again a week later. They face Kings, Golden Knights, Jets again, Avalanche. Like things start getting tough. Like March is a lot of home games, but a lot of tough opponents like Avalanche.
Vegas is another great one. You think the opportunity to go to Vegas for 2 games in the playoffs?
There's
these are great opportunities for Canuck fans.
Yeah, and the fact that that they close out, they have in April, the late finish in April, but Jets, Oilers, Knights, Kings, it's going to be a really interesting, exciting finish to the season. A lot of games in there that really have big importance in terms of setting up for the playoffs. I got an email from a reader saying, oh, in response to my playoff question, being like, come on, get it, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm sitting here going, I didn't reply, but it was sort of one of those ones, sir, like, do you understand how hard it is for them not to make the playoffs from this point? Like, that's why we're talking about them. But it's a position and all. Just, can they maintain this incredible pace they've been on? There's just so much stuff that's going to be exciting to follow over the next couple months.
We've run too long, so I can't get into it now. But that part of that is this stupid hockey culture about, like, don't jinx them, don't even suggest they'll touch the cup or talk about, like, just enjoy the ride. As we were talking about Vegas, we'll wrap up here real quick. I know it's apples and lug nuts, but Super Bowl prediction.
Oh, boy. Well, I got to go 49ers, my guys. Learn the lesson from the last Super Bowl before COVID when they were up and then they blew it against the Chiefs and it all went
10-point lead with 11 minutes to go,
Not, they'll never be the Falcons, right? But... I've got to go with my guys. My guys.
No, that's good. Well,
I don't have a score to predict.
I'm not going to
predict that Moj. Let's put it this way: I'll predict that Moj will have a good time and maybe even talk to The Rock again.
Oh, God, insufferable. I'm not going to put it on. Bengals. We know. My wife is a 49ers fan. She put money down on the 49ers prior to the season, so she's not only emotionally attached. She could win I think it's like $1,200 if the Niners pull off. I'm hoping for the Niners myself. I've just seen enough of Mahomes and the Chiefs as a Bengals fan, so we got that.
Okay.
All right, we'll wrap it up there, Patrick. Thanks for your time. Thanks for watching, listening, everyone. We're going to continue to do these. Send your comments, and Patrick does a mailbag every week. It's very good. He's got one. He's got to finish up today. We'll answer your questions. Leave them below, whether you're watching on YouTube or, under our stories. And, we will endeavor to answer your questions. So thanks, everyone. We will talk to you next week.